Hi, welcome to FrightHQ, the headquarters of horror entertainment. I'm Roy De Silva, and I'll be discussing with you various Bollywood horror movies, series, novels, and short stories. To begin, I'll be discussing Veerana, the Bollywood horror movie that was made by the Ramsays and released in theatres in 1988. The Ramsays were a family of filmmakers active from the 80s to the late 2000s. Famously, the family members worked in every department of the production house. So, while Shyam and Tulsi Ramsay directed, Gangu Ramsay did the DOP. They also worked in the stable system. So, J.K. Ahuja wrote many of the scripts and screenplays of their movies. Many of these movies have the charm and magic of earnest filmmaking that still makes it relevant in the history of Bollywood horror movies. Veerana is a perfect fodder for entertainment journalists even today. No discussion about Asian and Bollywood horror movies can ignore Veerana. It's a Bollywood horror movie of many firsts. It's probably the only Bollywood horror movie to have the name of the female actor come in the credits even before the title of the movie. When Shah Rukh Khan did this in 2013, it created a PR buzz, but the Ramsays did that back in 1988. Another unique aspect of the movie is a female serial killer. Stories with female killers were rare back then. Forget female serial killers. Maybe that's what interested the Ramsays in this story. The Ramsays were bold storytellers, if not always original. But they were also sharp businessmen and producers. They probably knew that the character of a female serial killer could backfire with the audience. But somewhere, the storytellers in the Ramsays knew that this could work. What idea did they implement so that they could get away by showing a female killer killing in the gory, bloody manner that was famous in the 80s and 90s in Bollywood? Easy, the character was under the spell of an ancient witch. Other directors have used different schemes to bring out the female serial killer in their movies. Rajiv Rai brought out a jilted lover for his movie Gupt in the 90s. Sawan Kumar Tak brought out a deranged woman who goes unhinged when she loses everything in his 90s movie Khalnaika. But Veerana was a movie of its times, and the psychological horror was just an interesting idea that the Bollywood horror directors had yet to perfect. So, the story is set in a believable premise, the Indian village. Back in the 80s, everyone knew someone who had relatives in the village. And when the city dwellers went to their village, they were accustomed to hear stories about witches, ghosts, and other superstitions from their relatives. So, they were quick to accept these storylines. The movie begins with a group of villagers requesting the Thakurs to help them because they think that a witch is killing all the men in the village. The Thakurs decide to help them, but little did they know that what they did would change their life forever. The younger Thakur disappears. His wife commits suicide. His daughter is sent to village to stay away from the evil. The younger daughter returns with her boyfriend, and the spate of murders is back. And this time, the suspect is the elder daughter. So there's a lot going on in the script. A woman is trying to unravel the truth and clear her family's name and of course save her cousin. Who said we didn't have women-driven movies in the 80s? The Ramsays came up with this unique script and gave us a vivid experience. Spooky bungalows shrouded in soulless darkness. Ancient-looking statues bathed in darkness with the right amount of light, making the audience feel that the statues may just come back to life. A tinge of sensuality to keep the whistling front benchers interested. Incredible cinematography that squeezed all the resources that the Ramsays had and brought them to screen, creating a memorable experience. Veerana is memorable because it is one of the few movies that are not mythological and still had full-fledged depictions of black magic, witchcraft, etc. The script really had a group of black magicians praying to a witch who was sacrificing men to an ancient evil that she was praying to. And the guys were pretty well equipped. The climax is actually in an underground dungeon and the black magicians are armed with swords. Ignore the fact that the swords were made of thick paper and think how awesome that was in the 1980s. As I said, the Ramsays were bold storytellers, but they were also thoughtful storytellers. Veerana is one of their many movies where the evil doesn't die, but it's just stopped for that moment. Maybe they always had the idea of a sequel even in the 1980s. The one aspect that the Ramsay movies lacked were big ticket actors, but that somehow worked for the Ramsays. The one aspect that the Ramsay movies lacked were big ticket actors, but that somehow worked for the Ramsays. In the 80s, Bollywood needed producers, actors, directors who didn't come with the baggage of being superstars. People who would experiment and go with the flow. That was perfect for the Ramses. Hemant Birje didn't worry about his family image when he was being seduced by a witch. Saila Chadda wasn't worried about a good girl image when she walked around in hot pants in Veerana. Jasmine didn't worry about her image while doing a song in a bathtub. And that brings us to Jasmine. Jasmine, simply put, was an incredibly beautiful woman. She disappeared after a few movies and people started wondering where she's gone off to. Even today, many content creators create videos about where Jasmine has disappeared. The Ramses also didn't talk much about it. It was only when Shama Das Gupta interviewed them for his book Don't Disturb the Dead that they said that Jasmine was married and in the US. Veerana is also memorable for its horror and death sequences. Gulshan Grover's character is sawed into two in a sawmill. A man is positively sexually assaulted and then killed and then sacrificed. Another man, after a sexual encounter, finds out that the person who he thinks is a human woman is actually a witch who kills him. And all this wrapped in a unique 80s humor tinge. I mean, Satisha plays someone planning to become a horror movie director and keeps on reading American horror novels. How meta that can be. These are just some of the few reasons that Veerana has become such an iconic movie. The movie is becoming increasingly rare also. It's only available on YouTube right now. No Indian VCD publisher has a copy of Veerana. That usually happens when the producers plan to make a sequel or a remake. There are some reports that said that the Ramses were planning to make a remake of Veerana, but there's nothing concrete about that. Be that as it may, Ajay Devgan has announced that he will be making a movie on the Ramses. If that happens, Veerana is going to play a major part in the plot. Until then, if you want to relive the movie, please watch it for free on YouTube. I'll be back next week discussing another iconic Bollywood horror movie.